Hello, Spookies, and welcome to Rick or Treat Horrorcast, hosted by yours ghoulie, Ricky J. Duarte. My guest this week is a visionary and filmmaker, having founded the popular Toronto-based production company and YouTube channel Deformed Lunchbox, which has made its mark producing and distributing short horror films since 2015. Now, the channel has since amassed millions of views and features over 50 short horror films, some of which have premiered at Toronto After Dark, Blood in the Snow, and Fantastic Fests, among various other film festivals, and have won an impressive number of awards along the way. They've just wrapped on shooting their first feature, Baleful, a Toronto-based DIT and editor. My guest got his start and launched the channel by, quote, having made a bunch of messed up short films in film school and wanting a place to put them. Welcome to the podcast, Peter Hatch.
Thanks so much for having me, Ricky. I'm excited to be here.
I'm super excited to have you as well. Your channel is fucking amazing. You produce and direct and write and just put together some incredible short horror films.
Thanks. I'm glad you like them. I mean, that's all we want is people to enjoy them and get some kind of reaction from them. So.
Yeah, well, you definitely do. You have really kind of blown up on YouTube. What was your reaction when you started realizing where this was headed for you?
Geez, that's a tough question. I don't really know. I mean, at first it was just kind of a place to plop some short films, and no one was really watching them. Like, we'd be excited if we got 100 views on one of them. And then we released a trailer. We did some fun trailers over COVID. We did one that was Batman versus Jason Voorhees. And that one seemed to get somewhat popular. Got about 100,000 views. And then we did Indiana Jones versus Hellraiser.
Nice.
And then we had the short film that had been in festivals called Make Me a Sandwich. And it just kind of popped off. Like some reaction channels got a hold of it and then started flooding onto TikTok. And I think people just love to watch it and react and then like dare their friends to watch it. So that really kind of grew the channel into something bigger. And now, I mean, even with millions of views, you almost need billions of views to really do super well on YouTube. Yeah. Or hundreds of millions. So usually the money that we make from monetization, I mean, we don't really make enough, but we put everything back into the other short films. So we are doing another short film in a month, and we've got some short films that have been submitted to us. We've got a really cool one coming out in a week called Greed and Gore from a friend of mine. So we kind of just became this hub for horror, and I don't know, I'm just kind of riding the train, seeing where it takes us here.
That's great. It's an exciting train to keep an eye on for sure. It's really fascinating to me. You know, you talk about monetization, and I mean, fuck, I started a podcast if I had started a podcast before the pandemic, I'd probably be doing a lot better, but now everybody has a podcast. So I get what you're saying about trying to monetize and get it out there. You know, it's not easy, but the means of distributing films, specifically independent films, it's shifting rapidly, right? Think of like the Philippou brothers who did Talk to Me. They found success through the YouTube route. Do you think this is the future of filmmakers getting their big break?
That's a good question too. I mean, I can from our standpoint, I guess I used to want to make feature films I mean, I still do, but I guess the dream went away as I got older and I needed money and I was working in the industry and commercials. And it sort of came back through YouTube, kind of unexpected. Now that we have this following, like for example, our feature film Baleful, the only reason I'm not going to say the only reason, but a major reason that it's getting interest from some distributors is because we have the YouTube channel that gets 1,000 views an hour. So we can kind of use it to, as YouTube grows, we have more of an audience to promote for the feature, and we have this channel that we can help bolster up the feature and bolster the brand. So I would say it definitely helps. On the other hand, we've had horror filmmakers who send us their horror film, and I ask them this. I go, "Do you not want to start your own channel and your own thing?" And I think it just depends. For some people, they really want to make their couple of shorts. They want to get some views and exposure, and then they want to move on to other things. But it's for us, in a sad way, we almost look at it like content, right? Like we're almost like Alter or Crypt TV that way. We're like, there's so many great filmmakers, so many great short films out there, and it's like, wow, short films deserve to be seen and deserve an audience, and I love the format of short films myself. So I'm totally happy to have like an ongoing content stream. I know content's kind of a dirty word, but yeah, I think definitely the future is going to be having your own audience and having your own brand. I mean, even like you mentioned, Talk to Me, there's also like Lights Out.
Right.
There's also Backrooms. Like a
Yes.
lot of these big independent, out of nowhere films are coming from this kind of internet fame, if you will, or internet and sensation. We've had people ask us about making a feature film of Make Me a Sandwich because it's got so many views, but I don't think there is a feature film in that. I think it's strictly a short film. So I think I'm not always agreeing that a short film should be a feature film, but certainly an audience is important these days.
That's a great point. And I think it's important to recognize also when a short film might not be a feature, like a certain recent film about a swimming pool that didn't do super well in
Was
theaters.
that a short film
It
first?
was, yeah, it was a short film in like maybe 2015, I think. And the short works, there's just not much else to it to warrant a feature. Not,
Wow, I didn't
yeah,
know that.
yeah. But anyway, enough about that movie. You say the word content, and it is a struggle. But like when I think of content, I think of like the peanut filler that you put in packages when you ship something fragile. It's just kind of
Yep.
like there, like to fill space. But that's not how I look at your channel at all. Like not even a little bit. Like you guys are producing art, you're putting people out there, you're putting yourselves out there. And so for someone who is not involved with the company but enjoys watching what you do, I don't see it as content at all. Like you guys are fucking crushing it.
Great, thank you. And we try not to release too much. We're usually releasing a short film every month or so, and we do have kind of like a quality bar, like
Yeah,
a Nintendo seal of quality, if you will.
sure.
And so I have been some films have been sent to me that, had really rough sound or something like that, and we kind of had to say sorry, maybe. So we like to think that every short is worthy of its own kind of interpretation and experience.
I do love the short format as well. It's always my favorite part of a film festival are the short blocks.
Yeah.
So you brought up Baleful. What can you tell us about your first feature?
Well, I try not to give too much away because I like to think that it's a movie that is best to go in blind.
Good.
But it's basically about a curse that passes from person to person. And so the format of the movie, the structure of it is almost like you're watching kind of like 8 or so short films that are interconnected and they kind of weave together with the same curse. So if you've watched our channel and kind of gotten used to like I want to call it like absurdist style of humor and psychological horror and using food to in a horrific way or to embellish food, you're gonna kind of it's almost like we could have called the movie Deformed Lunchbox the movie
Okay.
because it's very much in line with what you expect. But we went big on it. I mean, we shot for 41 days, which is
Wow.
long. Yeah, and we had like no budget at all. So there was days where the shooting was just me and an actor, or it was just me and one friend, and we were just shooting, inserts of ants or something.
Right.
Ants, the insect, not our
Not your
ants,
not the
not our aunts and
relatives.
uncles.
Not the relatives.
So I want to say the movie's it's a little avant-garde. It's a little out there. I also really wanted to avoid the stigma of a low budget film of being, one actor in one location. So we really, really wanted to load it with many characters, many locations, many things happening. So it's chock full of stuff. But I am at that point now where I've watched the movie like a dozen times now, and at this point, I feel like I'm just waiting for people to see it.
Yeah.
So,
Are you planning to go like the festival route? Are you dropping directly on your channel? What's going to happen there? And when can people expect it?
well, I'm hoping to get it out this year. I mean, the movie as of now is the picture is locked. sounds coming along that we're working on the color grade, and we have sent it to a couple distributors that we know personally. So at this point, we're gonna kind of wait and see what they say. This is my first major feature film. I did a documentary years ago, but this is my first narrative horror film, so it's kind of a learning experience for me as well. I can't fully say for certain. I think we're trying not to get it directly on the channel because we
Yeah.
want it to hopefully be on a big screen and something that you can watch with an audience, I think would be really impactful. But I imagine there'll be some festivals at some point, but we are kind of in this waiting phase. We're going to wait to hear back from our kind of our mentors about what the best path is, because you don't want to get it in a bunch of festivals, and then if you wait too long after the festival premieres, that can also be a really bad look for distributors. The movie's
Hmm.
old. So we're just kind of seeing what happens. Right now, I'm just in this headspace of thinking about the movie. What can I do to make the movie better? I'm doing the color myself. So it's just like, how do we improve this? How do we color this? So I guess I'm in that phase where I'm focusing on the trees, and I'm not seeing the forest for the trees just
Great.
yet. So
Yeah, that's great. So you're focusing on the creative project directly in front of you. Well, that's excellent. I'm really excited for you. I'm excited to check it out. We're going to talk today about 1978's Dawn of the Dead. And I specifically thought it would be cool to talk about a George A. Romero film with you because he was such a pioneer in independent filmmaking and such an innovator in ways to distribute. And I mean, he lost money. He never made the money he should have on Night of the Living Dead because of copyright issues, but he learned that lesson and then other people didn't have to. So I thought it was a really cool idea to talk about a George A. Romero, but we're going to get to that in a minute. I do every episode, I like to make some horror recommendations of horror that you have recently consumed. So like books or movies, TV, video games, anything that you recommend.
I will talk about a movie I watched the other day by Lars von Trier called The House That Jack Built. Have you seen this film?
No, and it's on my list, it's on my queue, and tell me all about it.
I mean, I try to watch a movie a day, but so my head's kind of scrambling with what movies are horrors that I've seen in the last week. But I definitely saw The House That Jack Built the other day, and man, it's far out. It is far out there. Kind of goes full tilt into metaphor and kind of I want to say like it's an art film in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways, but it's incredibly sadistic in like kind of a playful way, almost like Natural Born Killers. Like it just takes murder in a playful tone, and where it goes at the end, it's kind of a mind Gaspar Noé style. You ever watch his films?
Oh yeah, I saw Climax like 6 months ago, and it was fucking crazy.
I haven't seen Climax yet. I should see that.
High recommend. Yeah, if you're into Lars von Trier, you need to check out Climax too. But
Okay.
go on.
But anyways, yeah, the movie's wild. It's got Matt Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Am I saying right? Yeah, Matt
I,
Dillon's the
I
lead.
I do that too. Don't worry.
I was gonna say Matt Damon.
No, I waited on him once, and I couldn't remember which Matt I was waiting on.
I think it's one of his best roles, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like he's wild in it, and it's just like weirdly sadistic and playful and artful, and like any art film, it's way too long.
Right.
But it just goes to these depths that you're like, where are we in my soul now? So I thought that's really. I'm not going to say I recommend it for everybody, but if you're looking for something pretty far out there, this is a movie. This is a horror movie for you.
I suspect the majority of my listeners would find that movie very appealing. I need to check it out, and now that you have endorsed it, I absolutely will. I'll let you know what I think. I'll let you know how it goes.
Definitely.
Am I crazy? Is Uma Thurman in that movie too?
You know what? Here's the thing. I think she is, but she looks very different in it. But it's a
Okay,
very small role. Yeah, she is in it.
got it.
There's a couple actors you'll recognize in it.
Okay, all right, cool.
I also have seen, I watched Night Swim. You mentioned that earlier.
Okay, yeah.
But I think it's, yeah, like you said, I think it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Um,
I don't get on here and trash movies anymore, but
I figured, yeah.
I write reviews, and so one of the websites that I write for, I wrote a review for it, and I am not the kind of reviewer who goes for a punchline. Like I don't want to write a funny review at the expense of a filmmaker, but like I'm sick of Blumhouse doing this over and over and over again. And so that it was I think I called it Poultergeist, and
I just the way they tried to relate a baseball player and his long lost dreams to a swimming pool evil,
yeah.
it feels very contrived and not very scary. But you know what? I actually watched another Blumhouse movie just last night. I believe it's a Blumhouse co-production called They Them.
Oh yeah, Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon, and
Yeah.
I was surprisingly into it. I mean, it's a little different than what you'd expect out of a slasher, but it's got heart. It's well shot,
Hmm.
and it's just got that. It's one of those horror movies that's paced right.
Yeah.
It's just you're just kind of like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and it was like surprisingly refreshing of a movie. Right? Did you see They Them?
I did. It went under the radar, and I think the like non-binary esque title was like throwing people, and it was like people in the queer community were like, "Don't make a movie about us," and then people who aren't in the queer community were like, "Oh my god, are they talking about this again?" So it didn't quite find the audience that it should have, but I thought it was really well done and handled really well, and like you said, well
Yeah.
paced, and it was refreshing and unexpected.
I was very curious about how they were going to handle that too. Like I was like, okay, this is either going to go the wrong way and demonize non-binary, or it's going to be on the other side where it's just like it's really just like a pro. I mean, not that it shouldn't be pro, but just almost like that's the whole point of the movie.
Preachy, yeah.
But it really had like some nice little undertones and twists and themes about finding yourself. Like I was like, wow, they actually managed this subject matter really responsibly and with heart. And I was like, wow, like I was fully. I mean, it didn't blow me away. I wouldn't say it's like the best movie I've ever seen, but just like a modest slasher with an interesting perspective.
And Kevin Bacon. We love
And
Kevin
Kevin
Bacon
Bacon,
in a slasher. We love him in
he's
anything.
great. He's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are some great recs. I'm going to be a little selfish and recommend something related to me. So last summer, I filmed an episode of a TV show called Evil Lives Here. It's true crime, which is not technically horror, but I find true crime to be exploitative, which in turn turns it into horror in my
For
mind.
sure.
So anyway,
Yeah.
this is a docu-series, and it was my first like quote lead role on camera. I'm a stage actor primarily. And so I played the husband of a woman who murdered their children, and it was a high profile murder case, and it aired last night, and so I got to see
Awesome.
myself. Yeah, and it was it was trippy watching myself on TV, and I had some friends texting and calling and being really supportive. But it's a really solid episode, and
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
thanks. It was really exciting, and I got to say, it was like 40 or 50 pounds ago, so it was like this really cool like visual representation of the like bodily transformation I've gone through. It was just
Were you heavier or 40 pounds lighter?
I was 40. I was heavier when we filmed last
Yeah,
summer. So
you got range. You got range.
right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, check that out. It's streaming on Investigation Discovery, and it's on Max. This is gonna be probably the closest I'll ever be to being on HBO. So
No kidding. I got HBO Max.
check
I'll
it
definitely
out.
check that out.
Yeah. Episode is called She Hid the Knife in a Toy Box.
Oh wow. Okay.
Exactly what she did.
Do you have lines and everything?
Funny is that our scene work, like our scenes had tons of dialogue. It was a really dialogue heavy shoot, but because of the nature of it being like a true crime docu series, they cut like 97% of our dialogue
Yeah.
because
And
it's
they cut it to interviews and stuff, don't they?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I work
Which
on a lot of those shows. I worked on Intervention and
okay,
a lot of those murder shows I've worked on, so I know the kind of
yeah,
they are
yeah.
cool though. They're very
It
cool.
it is, and it I do feel like a lot of my better performance moments were during the dialogue. And so, because I play the husband of an abusive woman, a lot of it is me reacting to her walking away from me after saying something really shitty. And so, I feel like I make the same sad, confused face throughout the entire episode. But
Oh, then you murder them.
yeah, worth watching. Worth
Okay.
watching. All right, but
Definitely I'll check it out.
that's my recommendation this week. Selfishly, go watch me. But we came here to talk about a movie, Dawn of the Dead. What do you say we go Rick or treating?
Let's do it. Let's do it. It's a great movie.
We are talking Dawn of the Dead 1978. This is written and directed by George A. Romero. Of course, a sequel to 1968's Night of the Living Dead. Interesting how it connects as a sequel. George originally never wanted to do a sequel to that film. He felt like it was a one and done. He did what he came there to do. He made his statement. But Dario Argento happened to be in America on tour promoting Suspiria and hooked up with George, and they got to talking, and George had just toured this massive mall that was about to open, and it had sparked an idea for like what another Living Dead movie might be. Dario Argento loved it and flew him and his wife over to Rome to write this script and be like undisturbed and get this script out with the contingency that Dario would have the ability to release it in Europe and put his own European cut together and have distribution rights.
Which I understand is the biggest changes is the soundtrack.
Yeah, so he provided Goblin, who did the soundtrack for 97% of Argento's films. He hooked Romero up with them, and he uses a lot of the Goblin score, but not as much, I guess, as the European cut.
Interesting.
I haven't seen the European cut. There are, I mean, and I'm not exaggerating, roughly 10 cuts of this movie out there. So the version that I watched is the one that's currently on Amazon Prime, and it runs at about 2 hours and 19 minutes, which is like 11 or 12 minutes longer than IMDb lists the film as being. So the version that I watched has a little bit more, which throws me off with pacing for this film, but we'll talk about that as we go along.
Okay. I mean, I've only seen the remake, which is one of my favorite movies, funny enough. So
Okay.
I was coming at this as kind of like the origins of that. So I've only seen the version that I saw, which I think was probably the Amazon Prime version as well. Go on. It was great.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that remake. 2004, Zack Snyder comes out with a remake of Dawn of the Dead. What is your relationship to that remake?
It was one of those movies where it was like one of the first DVDs that everyone would remember, when everyone just had DVD collections
Yeah.
before like the internet kind of. So I just remember that was one of the DVDs my friend or some very casually like, you got to watch this. And this is before people had phones and distractions, so you just watch the movie. And I just remember being like, wow, this is surprisingly well done. And I think the thing that always got me about it was that it seems like the people are making smart decisions. And it seems like they're actually, it's like, the trope, I guess, of a lot of zombie movies is that it's just zombies attacking and people running. But both the remake and this, or the original here, the people are making kind of educated decisions on what to do, how to save themselves. And it's kind of feels refreshing. Obviously, they have the backdrop of the mall and how to utilize the mall for the best of their survival. So yeah, I don't know. There's just something refreshing about this kind of. It's not the origin of the zombie attack. At the like the other thing is that with this film, the original, that is the Dawn of the Dead, they don't really spell it out for you. They kind of expect the audience to already know what a zombie is.
Yeah.
They do kind of explain stuff, especially that first scene in the TV broadcast station. They kind of talk about, what the guys are arguing about how to get rid of a zombie, but we're almost expected to already understand it. And same with the remake as well, which is kind of interesting. They don't spell out the zombie outbreak for you. They just kind of like put you in the scenario of pretty smart people trying to survive. And I really love that about it. It just hits the ground running.
I'll go back to the remake in a minute. Romero in Night of the Living Dead basically defined everything that we know about zombies now. The movie never uses the word zombie. I believe they call them ghouls in that film, but that is literally where we get shoot them in the head. It's where we get zombies eating flesh and eating brains. It's just before that film, the quote, like zombies that were showcased in cinema were brought about by voodoo rituals, right? And so they were kind of like someone who was controlled by a voodoo priest to do their bidding.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the modern definition of zombie is technically incorrect. It really is, comes from voodoo practices. But yeah, fascinating to me that Night of the Living Dead defined so many things that we just now know as zombies. So this film, 10 years later, Dawn of the Dead, kind of furthered that, right, a little bit. With it moves a little bit more into, if you are bitten by a zombie, then you turn at a point. Just furthers those rules that we've all come to learn. And I love the 70s as a decade for horror. I don't know how many zombie films were released between Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead.
I mean, there's 10 years, but I was shocked to learn that there was a whole 10 years between them.
Yeah. Well, and again, Romero didn't want to make another one. He ended up making Day of the Dead, later on in his career.
As the end of the trilogy, they call it the trilogy.
Yeah.
But they have made more. My understanding is he's made two more. Made Land of the Dead as well. Two other looked like straight to DVD, and then I believe Argento made a few or something like that, right?
So Night of the Living Dead was co-written, George Romero and John A. Russo, and they had a falling out, and they actually split kind of the quote franchise in half. So John Russo went ahead and made the Return of the Living Dead movie and sequels, right? And so
Oh,
he got to use the title Living Dead in his sequels, whereas George went along and made sequels, and his have to do with like the time of day, like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, but he couldn't use the word living in his titles. So technically, Return of the Living Dead, the 1985 movie with the punks, and that's a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. It's just a
okay.
completely different universe.
I haven't seen those. I won't lie. I've seen Night of the Living Dead and I've seen the big zombie films, but I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a zombie aficionado when it comes to these classic. But that is very interesting. That it's almost like what's happening with the Chucky series, with
Yeah,
Mancini having his own version of the story, and so does what is it, Warner Brothers or something, doing their own,
with
and
the remake.
they're just calling it Child's Play.
Yeah.
I'm all for franchises splintering into different ideas. Why not? I mean, think about zombies now. It's like we could make a zombie film. It wouldn't even be considered copyright infringement. It's such a staple of the horror. It's like its own subgenre.
So you mentioned Argento making these films. Argento had the European rights to this movie. And then from there, the sequels that came from it were, did you ever see Zombie 2? Very
I did it. The
famous.
one that has no E on it, right?
Right. And it's got the famous like splinter through the eyeball scene. So that is technically a European version of a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. It's all very muddled until you like look at a map almost like
Look at
the Halloween
a tree.
franchise. Yeah, where you see the tree of the different timelines. It's very much like that.
Hmm.
But so, all right, back to Dawn. George, he describes this film as the balance point in the series when the number of humans is the same as the number of zombies. So in Night of the Living Dead, there are more humans than zombies. In this one, it's equal. And then in Day of the Dead, there are more zombies than humans left. And so it's a turning point between those two extremes, which is a cool point because you see these people change and you see the moment when they realize this is what the world is from now on.
Yeah, and then Land of the Dead is like they've almost organized their own structure of government within the zombie world, right? So it's
Yeah.
these different. It's very interesting, different points of acceptance, I guess.
So the definition of a George Romero zombie is slow walking, stumbly, whereas the Zack Snyder film introduced running zombies. I believe that was right before 28 Days Later. They were both around the same time and showcased the running zombies, which was exciting and cool at the time. Some people think that or say that it takes away from the scariness of a stumbly Romero zombie. I don't necessarily know that it does. They can both exist in the world simultaneously, as far as I'm concerned.
You know what? I think the running zombie is much scarier. I don't know. There's something about. I mean, I know these are older films, Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Dead or Living Dead, but the zombies don't seem very scary to me. And maybe that's just because I've played so many video games. You know, you just figure if you have a gun, you can. I know what I can do with a video game.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's almost like I don't know. I didn't find Dawn of the Dead scary in any way. I almost didn't even feel a lot of tension. It was
Mm-hmm.
more like I was almost watching it like it was like an adventure, like the Goonies. Like
Sure.
these four people, they're way more than capable. There's a helicopter pilot and like two like SWAT team members that are well armed and they're smart. And so it's almost like this kind of adventure feeling where when the zombies can run at you, it's like they would not take the risks they took in this film. We'll probably
No.
get to that, but some of the risks they take in this movie, I'm like, oh my God, that's so risky. I can't believe they're doing that.
Yeah.
Where the running zombies are like, oh my God, if they get one nibble on you, like that's you're turning and that's it.
Well, and we're going to run out of stamina. They are not going to, they're just going to keep coming for you as they run, you know?
Totally. I remember when I think it was 28 Days Later came out in like 2001 or two. It was just before the remake.
Okay.
And I remember that the new thing that movie did was running zombies. Like that was its
Mm-hmm.
kind of a new idea. And it was horrifying. I don't know. It was like adding an ability to something you didn't think had that ability, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was
So
unexpected, totally unexpected. The last thing I'll say about the remake is that the opening, like 10 to 15-minute sequence was mind blowing
yeah.
with, you know, the little girl neighbor being a zombie and then the really great overhead shot of her driving away and there's explosions happen. It was just a really cool intro to the film. I personally loved the film when I saw it in a theater. I was obsessed with it. Years later, as I've revisited, it doesn't do the same thing for me that it did.
Hmm.
And, you know, I think it's really great, like kind of almost like Candy, right? It's just like a great, fun, cool zombie movie. For me, it kind of loses a lot of the statements that this film was trying to make. But conversely, so this film made those statements. If you try to redo it, it's like you're copying what Romero was saying, you know?
Okay. I'm interested to know what the statements you feel like it makes are, because to me, I feel like zombie movies they're almost always more of an experience and an adventure and a commercialized kind of thing. So I guess I'm maybe at a loss at what thematic subtext you picked up.
All right. Yeah, well let's go into that then. So as you said, this starts kind of at the end of Night of the Living Dead, right? I think this technically takes place 3 weeks later. So we have seen kind of the enclosed people trapped in a farmhouse together, more of a character study, I think, than we get from these characters in this film. But
Mhm.
this film starts with a camera opening to an orange shag carpeted wall, which Romero was approached, and I think Tom Savini egged him on and was like, "Were you just priming people for a colorized version of Night of the Living Dead?" And Romero said, "No, we just had an orange shag carpet wall. I just wanted to showcase it." We see Francine, played by Galen Ross, startled awake from a nap, and the title card, Dawn of the Dead. And she's in a news station as these television hosts argue about the state of panic in the world and the reason for it, which is the dead returning, reanimating, returning to life, and eating people. Some of the crew has already left the station. They really don't know how much longer they're going to stay on the air. It's a really great intro because we are jarringly thrust into this insanity, like
Mhm.
right when Francine is like startled out of her sleep. And so we are just expected, like you said, to know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, that scene really, I feel like that scene resonated with me because you have the guy he's like a doctor giving patient on air, and you have the other guy yelling at him saying, "I don't believe that. Maybe that you're just giving us so much information." And I'm like, wow, this kind of harkens to a couple of years ago
Yeah.
with like vaccines and COVID and everything, and just the state of people's vicious denial of science. And the thing is, we the audience know that the guy's telling the truth
Mm-hmm.
and they should be listening to him, but everyone's booing at him and yelling at him, and there's chaos. And I was just kind of like, wow, that kind of resembles our, I guess, our world of misinformation nowadays. And in chaos, how that literally, when we had a pandemic, we fell into that same level of misinformation, chaos, and anarchy, I guess you could
Yeah.
call it.
I mean, you think of the wasted time, energy, and resources that were put into like the media surrounding the pandemic, which is what is happening in this film. It's mind blowing that in 1978, like they knew that's what would happen.
Yeah, they called it.
So they're broadcasting on the camera these rescue stations that people are supposed to go to, but we learned that over half of them have already been knocked out and destroyed. So they've probably been broadcasting the wrong information for about 12 hours. Now, at this point, George Romero makes a cameo in the movie. He's on a headset phone and he's smoking a cigarette. He's like right in front of the camera for a number of shots.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot, everyone's friends and family made an appearance in this movie. Tom Savini's niece and nephew are in
Yep.
it. Like it's just everybody made an appearance in this movie. There's panic and shouting all over the TV studio. It's uncertain how much longer they're going to be on the air. One of the talking heads is he's basically defining what we learned in the first film, right? The dead are coming back to life and killing them, and when they get up, they eat people, and the kill them by the brain or separating the head. So these things. He's just kind of reiterating the facts, and like you said, he's not getting believed by everybody.
Hmm.
It's just overwhelming. Now, Francine insists we need to take down these old rescue stations off of the screen. You're sending people to their deaths, but the station manager freaks out on her and he's telling her they have to keep these rescue stations on the screen or people are going to tune out. So he's literally worried about the ratings of his fucking news channel when the world is falling apart and people just start walking out on their jobs, including a police officer. Like, this guy just wants ratings in the middle
It's
of this.
wild. And
But
you know what the thing is too is I figured they're probably one of the only channels available.
mm-hmm.
And the fact that they later on go through such lengths to get a TV to watch whatever they can get, I think he's actually wrong. I think a lot of people still would be tuning in. I think
Yeah,
they wouldn't care about the tickers on the bottom if they're going to tell them to go to an abandoned rescue center and die.
right.
So I think his but Yeah, that's a stark moment in the movie about just his need for views in the worst time, right?
Yeah, it's sickening and unfortunately very real when it comes to
Yeah, that's
media.
like the realest part about it.
Yeah, yeah. So Stephen arrived, and think about it. If these rescue stations are destroyed already, it's totally fake news. Oh my God, I just realized that. All right, so Stephen arrives, and he is a reporter. He's like an on-screen anchorman for the network. And he tells Francine to meet him upstairs at the helipad on the roof at 9 p.m. We're getting the hell out of here. There's no point in staying. And she argues at first, but he insists, like, don't make me come looking for you. And we'll find out later why he's so adamant that she join him, but we don't know that yet. So this cameraman who's standing nearby, who's like eavesdropping, he's just got like wide eyes and his ear is turned toward them. That would be me if I were in the station. He's overhearing this and he tells her to just go ahead, like get out of here. There's no point. We're going to be off the air by 12 anyway. And then he just says very solemnly, our responsibility is finished. And it's so ominous and it's so George, like telling the audience, like, the human race is doomed, you know?
Yeah, save yourself
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Now we have a really vicious shift in what's happening because we cut to a tenement in the projects where basically civilians have all been told get out of your private residences and evacuate, right? You're not safe there, but this group of tenants have refused to do it. So a SWAT team is invading to force them out of their home. It turns out instead of these people who live in this building are keeping the bodies of their dead within the walls of the building, which is obviously very, very unsafe. So the SWAT team is led by Roger. He's played by Scott H. Reiniger, waiting on the rooftop to get orders. And one particular SWAT member named Wooly, played by James Bafico, he's like ready to hurt people.
He's like the head of their squad, I believe, right? Isn't he their head of their little squad
and he's
at that time?
racist, and
Oh yeah,
he's
he dropping the N bombs.
yeah, trigger happy and just wants to hurt people and just he's a mess, right?
He's almost loving it. He's almost loving it.
Yeah, for sure. He can't wait to get in there.
You know what else got me about this opening scene is when Roger, he kind of looks at this other blonde-haired troop next to him, who seems like kind of like a newbie, like it's his first day.
Yeah, he's like wide-eyed.
And he's like, I'm ready. And then the moment they open the door and start shooting at him, like I guess the resistance, he gets one right in the head.
Yeah.
And there's another movie that I can't remember the other movie I'm thinking of that does this, where it takes someone so innocent and kills them off really quickly. And it's almost like the movie giving a signal to the audience or to the setting to say, it doesn't matter anymore. Like there's no sympathy for someone new here.
Yeah.
Like if you're not experienced and you're not ready, like you're gonna die and you're gonna die quickly. So that when that happened, I think that's the moment in the movie that really got me. It really grabbed me. I'm like, oh, this movie's not gonna F around. But I still feel bad for that rookie.
I know he's so wide-eyed and he gets some advice from Roger and he's like, yeah, I'll be fine. And then bam, right in the head. I think that's probably when I got grabbed too. I have to say the jarring opening in the news station was really off-putting to me.
Yeah.
But now that I've finished the film, I hadn't seen this in 20 years. So it was all I remembered the big moments, but now that I have finished the film and analyzed it a lot more, I really appreciate what Romero was doing there, throwing us into this madness. But at first I was like, fuck, this movie is so loud. There's so many gunshots, there's so many people yelling. It was like my ADHD was through the roof, but for a reason, you know?
I love it though. It's anxiety inducing. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. So as you said, the rebellion has emerged onto the roof. There's a giant shootout going on, SWAT team versus these citizens, and Roger so the quote apparent leader maybe of these people gets cornered by Roger, and Roger is not actually going to shoot him. Roger might be giving him a chance. This guy isn't clearly in brown face. I hate to say it, but Tom Savini, our makeup artist, absolutely took a white person and made him Latino.
Puerto Rican, yeah.
Yeah. But so he decides to run for it and he's instantly shot. The building is gassed, and the citizens who, like the tenants of this building, start emerging from their units, and they're all families. And there are children and there are couples, and they're all people of color. And Wooly goes in hard and he just busts down a door and blows a man's head off.
I think innocent people, he killed a few innocents as well.
Yeah, just completely out of control. That exploding head, by the way, I guess let's talk a moment about Tom Savini doing this makeup, because this was kind of his first not his first, but this was like maybe the biggest project he'd worked on to date. he has openly criticized his choice to use gray makeup on the zombies. And so I'm not going to sit here and trash it because he's already trashed it himself.
It almost looked blue on my TV. It almost looked like the zombies were blue.
Well, and that's his problem with it, is that so Night of the Living Dead was in black and white. You couldn't see what color they were. So he was like, I'm going to make them gray because they looked gray in the film. But with all the lighting on camera, they look blue. And that's his big regret with this movie, because all of the prosthetics, all of the exploding heads, all of the stabbing and machetes to the head, it all looks gorgeous still. It's the blue zombies that take me out of this film.
Honestly, I was gonna say the same. They look a little goofy.
Yeah.
It's almost like maybe someone should do like a fan regrade and go back and take out all the blue zombies and make them gray, because they really could.
Well, you work in color
Maybe
grading.
I should. Maybe I should do. I'll spend a year on it.
Yeah. The budget was super low for this film. They had over 200 extras, and so it took about 3 hours to apply the makeup to the extras. And so I can totally see them just like splashing what they could on people to get them camera ready, whatever camera ready looked like that day.
It's also the 70s, so there's a point where I have to disconnect from my modern sensibilities around how a movie should look, and I'm just kind of like, yeah.
We have The Walking Dead now. We have video games. We have all of these, incredibly realistic zombies. Whereas, I guess some gray paint that looks blue worked back then, maybe. So Wooly is on this killing spree, and there's a struggle between him and Roger. Roger kind of gets thrown to the side. Wooly opens a door that a tenant told him not to open, and then Wooly is blasted by a shotgun.
It's Peter.
It's Peter.
This is our introduction to Peter. He's in a gas mask, and he comes out and he goes, "Get down!" And then Roger kind of gets flung down, and he blows him away. And the one thing I wasn't sure about this part, because I actually watched it twice.
Yeah.
Does he shoot him through? Did he shoot through him and then kill the person inside the apartment as well?
So it's hard to see because I couldn't quite tell. It's edited unclearly for me, and I guess for you too. So
I wasn't sure if they opened the door, there's already a corpse on the floor, or if that shot killing whatever his name is, Wooly, went through him and killed the other person. But I mean, at this point, it's all chaos anyways. Like there's people all over the stairs, there's kids, there's people screaming. So it works for me that I don't really know what happened.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Because if you're in this situation, you have no idea what's going on. Inside this room are severed body parts and children's toys, and there's a dead man with a missing foot in the kitchen floor, and he starts to move. And a SWAT member hesitates to shoot him. And when he does this, the dead enter the room and they start fighting with the SWATs. Guns are being fired and the dead are shot and killed. And this woman is calling out for her husband. And she sees him in the hallway and she runs out and she embraces him and doesn't realize that he's a zombie. And he bites her neck wide open, and it's gorgeous looking. Like the bites in this movie look so good.
Chewy. I think he bites her arm as well. Like it's one of the neck and one of the arm. Those are some of the cringiest in good way bites.
Sure. Real bad. And then he gets blasted in the head. The back of his head explodes against a wall. There's a lot of great head explosions against walls in this film.
Yeah.
We see a young SWAT member blow his own brains out, or he holds the gun to his head, and then we hear it.
The same one who is hesitant to kill the person on the floor. Another blonde-haired rookie.
Yeah.
It's so pretty dark. It's pretty dark when like the young rookie cop shoots himself in the head. Like that's like he has no hope.
No, it's a really bleak first 15 minutes to this film.
Yeah.
Roger sees this happen and he runs to what is maybe like a laundry room for a moment, just to maybe throw up in a sink. And he's met by a tall SWAT member in a gas mask who removes it. And it turns out to be Peter, played by the incredible Ken Foree. I think he's so fucking good in this movie. Like,
oh yeah.
So good. And he doesn't have to do a lot to be good. He just carries this like
stern. He's got the stern, strong, almost like Stallone or Denzel Equalizer, like just kind of. I'd want him on my team.
Yeah,
in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, and it's like he just knows what to do. Like he has seen some shit, and we never find out where or why he knows what to do, but he absolutely does. They sit together and share a smoke, and they discuss the possibility of, quote, running. Like, fuck this SWAT team shit. Like, this is not right? The world has fallen apart. And Roger tells Peter that there's a helicopter that his friend told him about when a priest, an old priest played by Jesse Del Rey, comes through the door, missing a leg, like he's on crutches. And he asks them, please let me pass. And he tells them many people have died in the last week, and they are in the basement of this building. He says, "You are stronger than us, but I think soon they'll be stronger than you." And then he says this line, and I love this line. He says, "When the dead walk the earth, you must stop the killing or you'll lose the war," which is fucking brilliant, because if you keep killing people and they keep coming back to life, you're going to be outnumbered by the dead and you're going to lose
Unless you shoot them in the head.
unless you shoot them in the head. Um,
Right.
so he leaves, and Peter and Roger, they do find the basement, and it has a collection of the dead people. They've been wrangled there. There's a moment when he's beautifully backlit by like a light bulb behind him, and he just starts shooting them one by one in the head. And there are like tears streaming down his face, but he's
Yeah.
not openly weeping. It's just this gorgeous moment of tears running down his face while he is putting these quote people kind of out of their misery. And he aims at one and he's out of bullets, and so Roger steps in and shoots that one for him, and it's like their bonding moment.
Yeah, the scene I feel like did a lot because on one hand, I feel like it's disturbing, and I think if they had added this type of scene to a modern film, it'd be like he's disturbed,
Yeah.
but also I think it shows that where other people that we come across in the film are like hesitant to shoot zombies or run away from them. I think this is where it's almost letting us as the film audience and as people who understand zombies, these guys know what to do.
Yeah.
These guys know, and yes, they have their bonding moment, but at that moment, I'm like, okay, this guy Peter and this guy Roger, they know how to kill a zombie. They're not going to hesitate to kill a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
These guys together are well equipped to survive. So I think that's kind of some of the legwork this little scene is doing. Great scene though. I really feel like they should have added that in some context to the remake because it's one of the most powerful moments, and it's just kind of gross too. Like you're
Yeah.
seeing some of the bodies that had been like tied up, right? They had like I don't know,
Like wrapped in
wrapped
sheets,
them.
or yeah.
They're like are struggling, and it's just like this kind of gross scene of depravity. Yeah.
The one or two that are wrapped up in a blanket, it really struck me because it's just like that is that creature's existence. Like it doesn't know that it's alive. It's just like rolling around wrapped in a sheet. I don't know. It felt really icky to me.
Yeah.
Roger asks, "Why do they keep them in here?" And Peter replies, "Because they still believe there's respect in dying." And it's like this community is still showing reverence for their dead. They can't, not seeing that they're no longer the people that they loved, but that they are these, flesh eating creatures. Okay, so Francine and Steven arrive on the roof of the building. Steven is looking for Roger. So that's the friend that Roger was talking about that has a helicopter. It's all coming together. He goes inside the building while Francine is filling the tank of the helicopter with gas when a group of raiders holds them at gunpoint.
Are they raiders or are they other police officers?
So they're wearing police hats. Here's the thing. This is actually not the tenant, but this is a different building that they said that they would meet each other at for the helicopter.
Yeah, I figured the two of them had flown from the WGON
Yeah.
broadcast station and landed there to fuel up and meet Peter.
Right.
And then they come across kind of three police officers who are just like, kind of like, screw this. Let's just raid it and be safe.
So I
But
don't think that they were police officers. I think that they were just wearing the hats. I think that the people who are dead in the building were those officers. And I think that these guys might have killed them, or if they didn't kill them, because they comment on like those guys were dead when we got here. Maybe they took the hats off of them or whatever, but we don't know. Did they kill them? Are they just raiding this place? We never find out anything else about these guys.
okay.
Yeah, they recognize Steve from TV and they discuss stealing the helicopter, but no one knows how to fly it. And, maybe we should just stick to our own plan when a patrol car approaches, and it turns out to be Roger and Peter. So everyone decides to stand down and the raiders go their separate way. Steve asks who's the new guy, and Roger says he's Peter. He's all right. But this is kind of a throwaway moment. I actually really love it when one of the raiders, he's jonesing for a cigarette, and he asks, like, do any of you guys have a cigarette? And they all say no. And then they get in the helicopter and fly away, and then they all light a cigarette. And it's very much like, as a former smoker, it's very much a like, you are not sharing anything with anybody ever again kind of thing. Like everything is rationed. Cigarettes are going to run out one day, and I don't owe you anything. It's just like the demise of humanity, right? Falling.
They won't. Yeah, I guess I kind of missed the significance of that the first time. But yeah, it's like they wouldn't even lend him one smoke. I mean, he did point a gun at them, so
right.
screw
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. But it's the moment where they all like light up a cigarette in the helicopter, where it's like, man, yeah, you're not going to help anybody. They're not your people, right? You stick with your own people.
Yeah.
In a situation like this.
Which, what's interesting though, as a kind of just a thought, you don't really ever get a sense that Roger and Steven have like what is their connection, and you don't really get a sense of their friendship ever.
Never once.
So I'm curious how, he says I have a friend who has a helicopter, and they obviously invited him among anyone else.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's kind of a little bit of an oversight, or like why later on you kind of get Peter and Roger kind of like slandering Steve Flyboys if he doesn't know what he's doing, and
Right.
but
We get, I think it's intentional. We get a lot of opportunities to get to know these characters better, and I don't want to give anything away yet, but the relationship between Steven and Francine is never really explored either. When we have ample opportunity for them to try to talk it out, you know?
you're right. You're right. Maybe that was intentional, that these characters are like, we're just so smacked in the middle of their crisis that there isn't any of that traditional like,
Yeah.
let's talk it through. I assumed that Francine and Steven, they were a couple, is what I thought.
Well, so when they take off, Peter asks, "Are you guys leaving anybody behind?" Francine says, "An ex-husband." Roger says, "An ex-wife." And then Francine asks Peter, and Peter says, "Yeah, two brothers." And she asks him, in the extended version that I saw, this is cut out of the main, like the theatrical version. She says, like, birth brothers or soul brothers. And he says, like, one of each. And they have this moment where, he says, they just have this moment of what they've left behind and
Hmm.
getting to know each other a little bit, which I think it's really interesting. And then that's just, Peter says, "I like to know who everybody is." And Francine agrees and says, "Yeah, so do I." And then they look at each other, and that's all of the getting to know each other that they do for the rest of the film. And I think that's intentional too.
Interesting. I mean, the rest of it's just an adventure, right? They don't really ever get that downtime to sit
No.
and be like, so where are you from? What's your story? What? And I'm almost
Yeah.
glad it doesn't, because it keeps the movie moving along. It's like survival is the most important thing.
And then by the time they do have downtime, they're different people. Like, it doesn't matter who I was, months ago. Like, this is who I am now, and this is the me that you know.
Yeah.
So daylight, and they are flying over a group of rednecks with guns. This is very reflective of the end of Night of the Living Dead, and I think that this is really establishing that they're in the same world. Roger comments that they're probably enjoying the whole thing, and then we see that they clearly are. These rednecks and the local police or local law enforcement are using the dead as target practice, and they're drinking and partying and listening to music and driving their trucks. And this is the Make America Great Again
Yeah.
group, like,
Dream.
as yeah, for sure.
They're flying over Alabama.
Yeah, the scene goes on, and I think it's interesting because we leave our heroes for like a good 3 minutes and just watch this group of people be terrible, and then we go back to them. There's one particular long shot of three zombies on a hill and they get shot that's just beautiful to me.
Hmm.
I think this film is gorgeously shot. Like, it's
Yeah.
really pretty to look at. They land at an airstrip and they look around for anything that they can scavenge. Now, Steven is attacked by a zombie who he bludgeons with a mallet, while Francine just stands there and does nothing. I was really worried that she was going to be another Barbara. Barbara being the female character in the first film who notoriously just stops talking and goes catatonic and is completely useless for the entire film. And this was the moment where I was like, come on, George, do better. We can do better than Barbara. And luckily we do. But unfortunately in this moment she does freeze. At the helicopter, a zombie with a 5 head approaches. It's very clearly a prosthetic, but man, this effect is cool because he has the top of his head chopped off by the propellers of the helicopter. And it's fucking gorgeous. It's such an iconic death in like zombie movies. It's beautiful.
You know what? I was reading about how this was actually related to the alternate ending. I don't know if you saw that fact.
I did. So I just literally moments before we recorded found out about this alternate ending.
Yeah, I don't know if we should talk about it yet, but it's like I guess that was one of the deaths they wanted from one of the main characters, but
Yeah.
they decided to keep the effect. And I thought it was awesome. I was just, I don't know if it was supposed to be kind of a little funny, but it was fun to watch. And it was, yeah, I don't know what to think about that. It was cool though.
So basically, when Tom Savini was hired, so Tom Savini worked as a military photographer in Vietnam. And so when he got back and was working in special effects, he said, like, if I can't make these kills look like the shit that I've seen, then I'm not doing my job right. And so that's why a lot of his work is so celebrated, is because like it came from a place of maybe dealing with the trauma that he had experienced in war.
I wonder if he actually ever saw like an accidental helicopter beheading though. Like,
He may have, because when Romero was writing the script and hired Savini, he told Savini brainstorm some interesting ways for people to die, and this was one of them that he came up with. So he very well may have.
wow.
He it was achieved by, I said this guy has a 5 head because it's very clear that he has an appliance on the top of his head when you see him
Yeah.
with like fishing wire attached, and basically the propellers were not there in when they were filming. They were added in post. So he had fishing wire and 2 guys holding onto it, and they ran away, and it ripped at the top of his head off, and then 2 guys with bladders like squirted blood out of the top of his head, and it looks incredible. And then they just added the propellers afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah.
I figured they would have just put a little explosive in a fake head or something, and
No, it looks great. Really
it
great.
does.
Beyond that, now Peter enters a room and he is ambushed by 2 dead children who he instinctually like mows down. This was Tom Savini's niece and nephew. He didn't know that there would be children running out that door. So his surprised face is a real reaction to seeing dead children running toward him. It's also the only 2 zombies in the entire Romero universe that run.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Roger ends up taking out a gnarly burned up zombie before it sneaks up on Peter while he's like processing that he just killed 2 child zombies.
I noticed when he kills the child zombies, they don't really show a lot of the clearly the editing hid some of the trauma from the children. Like they didn't have blood bursting out of the kid's head or anything. It was kind of tame.
Yeah, for sure. No squibs attached to these kids.
No.
As Peter emerges from this building, Steven has a gun aimed at him, and when he lowers it, Peter knocks him down to the ground and aims his gun at him and says, "Never aim your gun at anybody." Like, scary, isn't it? And it's kind of, I think that might be a little bit where the rift comes with calling him Flyboy and not like loving, not really liking each other. It's also maybe a little bit reminiscent of the end of Night of the Living Dead when Ben, the black man, survives and he's, exiting this house, and then he's just shot dead from a distance. And the end of the movie is like, you don't know if they killed him because he's black or if they killed him because they thought he was a zombie. And I think this might be reflective of that. But
Mix
then
of
this
both.
this is Peter, now being like, don't aim your fucking gun at me, dude. Like,
Oh yeah, and that's definitely got to be a callback, kind of being like, don't do that.
So as they fly, they discuss where they're going to go next. They have no food, they have no water, no radios, and they're going to need to sleep. So they find themselves flying over a shopping mall. I love the line, "Looks like a shopping center," one of those big indoor malls, which 1978 malls were new.
I thought that was weird how they like explained it, just in case you don't know what a shopping mall is.
Yeah. I mean, you think like
indoor.
malls, they were obsessed with malls in the 80s, right? And I guess because they were new in the late 70s.
Maybe that was a line added to for the international audience,
It may have
where
been.
some places they just don't know what a shopping mall is.
It may, yeah, that's a good point. They land on the roof where there's a helipad, which I thought was weird at first, but actually, cities have more helipads than you think that they do in case helicopters have to make an emergency landing. And they enter the mall. There are a decent number of zombies in the parking lot stumbling around toward the structure. They decide to go in and check it out. Francine comments, "What are they doing? The dead. Why would they come here?" And Steven says it's a memory, some sort of instinct, like this was an important place in their lives.
Which that point to me, I thought was a little maybe silly, because they focus on that a lot too. And I think there's a part later on in the movie where Steven kind of like goes back to a room because of his memory, and I thought that
Right.
they could have left that out, and I would have been able to buy that there was enough zombies already at the mall, or there's zombies just trying to get into the mall because they can sense the flesh or something. But
It's the movie comments on consumerism a lot with
yeah,
these zombies walking through merchandise in stores while there's like overhead, announcers saying sale on aisle 3. And I think it gets a little heavy-handed in this movie, but I also realized this was the first time that is like a zombie movie ever made that statement.
true.
Whereas we've seen it a little bit more since then, right? People are called a zombie if they follow the crowd, or
And I guess that is kind of our subtext, because I was thinking the subtext had something to do with consumerism.
yeah.
But still, I mean, if we can get into this later, but I just don't know if that subtext really, I'm finding the connection between a point about overconsumption and viral outbreak and survival. Like I don't quite see the actual connection to
Hmm.
those two things, but maybe there's more to explore
It
that
might
I'm
be
missing.
the mindlessness behind it. I do see what you're
Yeah.
saying about them having trace memories of their life before they were dead. Because if we are in one sentence, like in one breath told, don't think of these as human, and then in the next breath told they have trace memories of their life before, I mean, maybe it complicates things on purpose, you know?
I guess just like the idea of a zombie having connections to its human past
Yeah.
is something that it seems like zombie fiction is almost like objectively telling you isn't real. Of
Right.
like parents eating their kids and things that you'd think that if there was some sort of trace memory or connection to our human self that a zombie would not do that. But I
Right.
think and when I first heard him say that line, and my first thought was, oh, he's just saying that he's wrong. The zombies are just there because it's a shopping mall. There's probably a giant parking lot with an outbreak, and there's just a lot of reason for there to be humans around this area. So in my mind, it just kind of makes sense.
But then they double down on it.
Then they double down on it later, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
And triple down. And
It's the 70s.
right, right, right. So they see under a glass part of the roof there's a storage area, like a storage room with boxes that literally say survival supplies on them, which I thought was hysterical. They break
Yeah.
in this glass roof and explore. Francine finds some spam and she is not excited about it.
I mean, you're surviving for your life here. You can eat the spam. You
Yeah,
know?
for sure. So they hold out in the supply room for a while, and Peter says, you know, there's an awful lot of stuff down there, meaning the mall, that they could use. And Roger agrees, and they just like jump up and they are ready to go run through this mall.
I was surprised with that. It wasn't like let's wait till the morning. One of them's like falling asleep. He's like, "You want to
Yeah.
go down there?" And they're like, "Let's do it right now."
Yeah, because Steven's already asleep. They're all exhausted, but they're just like excited by the idea of this. And so they do. And they comment that the zombies are really spread out, right? And they think they can outrun them. They call it a hit and run. Peter leaves Francine a shotgun and gives her like a very basic way to, like, this is how you use it. And they leave Steven asleep. They end up finding the power room and a massive ring of keys. Like there's like 100 keys on that ring and some walkie talkies. And then when they make it to the actual mall area with the shops, there are zombies everywhere. They look at a map and figure out which keys go to which stores, and they turn on all of the power in all of the areas of the mall, including like the Muzak, which is just generic music to shop by. And we get these great shots of zombies walking around a mall with shopping music in the background, going up escalators now that the escalators are turned on, like falling into the water fountains. And then, but there, it's juxtaposed with shots of mannequins as well, which I thought was really cool and interesting.
It's like what's a human? What's not a human? Where's the
Yeah.
divide? Yeah.
Yeah. Stephen and Peter run to a department store. It's Penny's. And Stephen, he decides he's like, I think I need some lighter fluid. And they just frolic through this department store. I love I'm gonna call it a bromance. Like these guys just hit it off, right? They have this very specific friendship. You're rooting for them. They really play off of each other well.
Yeah, they're like on a shopping spree. They seem like they're in the highest spirits.
Yep. They, you know, every once in a while kind of knock out a zombie. Peter finds a wheelbarrow. They're gathering supplies with the intention of running past the dead. So there's a shot where Roger slides down one of the escalators, the space in between it. And fun fact, it is now believed that escalators have like the bumps on them to prevent people from doing that because of this movie.
I was really impressed by that slide, actually. I remember seeing it being, is that a stunt person? I'm like, no, I don't think it was.
They didn't have money for stunt people. Tom Savini and one of the other crew members did most of the stunts in this, but he did that one himself.
That was an impressive slide down. That could have been bad,
Agreed.
but it was cool. It was
Yeah.
cool.
I believe I read it was improvised or he just came up with it and asked George right before they shot that.
Oh,
So they end up distracting the dead to another entrance of the store, and then they run back to the original one to escape through it.
well, I thought that part was really clever thinking on the filmmaker's part, but also, uh, man, I would not have risked it with the wheelbarrow. I mean, there are so many zombies out in this mall. I'm
Yeah.
surprised how brash they are about it. He's like, no, we can push it through, and they almost seem like they're having fun at this point. They're like, let's
Oh,
just get them
yeah.
all down here. There's not any terror in these two men, which I think is part of the reason why I didn't really view it as a horror film when I watched it. It was more of like a adventure because
Yeah.
they just have this calm over them that I gotta respect. in that scenario.
George calls this movie a horror comedy,
Comedy, interesting. Okay.
which I think has moments of it for sure. I think, there's so much satire going on that I think that's where he's getting that definition from.
Hmm.
So Steven has woken up and he's gone to look for them, and Peter has to help him escape from a bunch of zombies. Peter actually like picks one up and yeets it off the second floor balcony. They escape some zombie attacks, and then they all just laugh in the faces of a horde of zombies on the other side of a glass door. And it's this like crazy moment where you've got these zombies just trying to get in and they're just like laughing in their faces. And it's a moment of like broken humanity, but they're also bonding with each other. Overhead, we hear a sales announcement, about, shoppers head to aisle, blah, 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 while these zombies are pressing their face against the glass, trying to get in. We've got that consumerism commentary.
There's the subtext. Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. Yeah. And then I guess that there's a part here where it's almost like they gain a little bit of respect for Flyboy, right? They're like, we can use him. He's actually helpful.
Yeah.
Where I thought when Steven, right? Steven Flyboy, when he first like left, I'm like, you idiot. Like this is where things are gonna go wrong. Like you should have stayed. It's the famous, he's not listening, but then he's kind of fine. He joins the crew and it's all good. So
Well, and then that'll kick in a little bit too, regarding Francine. But so Peter says they have a good thing going here. Maybe they should hang out for a little bit before they just up and leave. They have resources they could use, they could rest. They end up finding an air vent in an elevator shaft that leads to a gun and ammo store. So they have plenty of weaponry to keep themselves afloat. Now, meanwhile, a Hare Krishna makes his way into the stairwell that heads up toward the safe room where Francine is waiting. And it traps her in the room. It busts through the door. She does find a bunch of flares and lights one.
but Steven took her gun, right? Didn't Steven take the gun that they left for her?
Yes, exactly.
What a jerk.
Seriously.
Yeah. Like,
so she's weaponless, but she's a quick thinker. This is where she starts to become a real person and not just the Barbara from Night of the Living Dead. The flare startles the zombie because, as we learned in Night of the Living Dead, they are afraid of fire. We get a great shot of the Hare Krishna stepping between some piles of boxes. The lighting, there are just moments of lighting in this film that are so simple and understated with kind of fluorescent mall lighting, that really work for me. The guys bust in and she's rescued. They bludgeon the zombie instead of shooting it to avoid the other zombies hearing it. Now we cut to Roger and Peter eating cheese and caviar as they try to watch the emergency broadcast network. There's nothing coming through. And Francine is off in another room having a cigarette by herself. Peter asks if she's okay. She seems sick. Steven says she's pregnant, and they discuss her body behind her back while she can hear them. And Peter asks Steven if he wants to get rid of it. Like, do you want to abort it? It's not too late.
I know. And he says, I know how.
I know how. I would have so many further questions for this man. Like, nobody questions how he knows how to do that.
Yeah, I was very curious about that. I mean, are we talking like coat hanger, or are we talking like he can make some sort of drink that she can drink because she's early? And also, is the implication that maybe the baby is Steven's?
Yeah, I think that's, for sure. Because when he tells her at the beginning of the movie, get on the helipad by 9 o'clock, don't make me come looking for you, I'm going to say that's probably why. You are never told anything about their relationship in this film, but I get the impression that they didn't mean for her to get pregnant. They probably just hooked up at work, and maybe there's a little bit of a grudge. But I just really appreciate that we don't get that distracting moment where they try to talk it out and, oh, I really had feelings for you. Like, they have a weird interaction later that we'll get to, but we don't get that romance because that would not be realistic in this.
It's almost amazing that I actually love that about when they do that with characters. They give you like so much depth without giving you a lot.
Yeah.
And just the fact that they have their exes, that they find out she's pregnant later, and the way they kind of treat each other, it adds such a context that really makes you start to really care about them.
Yeah.
And I will just say, the four people in this movie, like, there's no real jerk out of the four of them.
Yeah.
I was expecting one of them. I was expecting maybe Steven or Roger to kind of come out and be like this asshole who deserves to get killed. And that doesn't happen in this movie. And it seems like that's something that a modern film would definitely have. The modern Dawn of the Dead definitely has like the jerk characters, like the guy from Modern Family.
Because then it's so satisfying to see them get killed.
Totally. And it seems like almost an easy way. It's easier to take a group of people and make you have very animated animosity towards some of them
Hmm.
versus a group of people where you have endearment for all of them. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that this film stuck to the endearing
Well,
factor of all four characters.
these are characters that you root for, and they do, but like you don't have to like them all the time. But none of them are like that bully or that jerk or that asshole. It's
Yeah.
like they all kind of go through their own things separately, and yet they're stuck together, which I think is just really great writing.
It's just a very, I think that's got to be one of the darkest implications of the movie is that, well, should we get rid of it? It's
Yeah.
like no other movie would have the gusta to
Yeah.
make that a point of one of the characters because the natural thought is of course she wants to keep her baby. That's her whole point of her survival is to keep her
Yeah.
baby alive. So even the suggestion that like that could hold you up, that could slow you down, that could make you sick. It's such a I don't know, like a hard edge to survival,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The
Um,
remake had the zombie baby moment as well, which for
yeah,
me felt too, it feels easy for me, but I don't know. We're not talking about that movie. So
yeah.
Stephen goes to check on Francine, who overheard all of this, and she calls him on it. And she repeats, like, do you want to abort it? And he says, do you? And she remarks, like, no one cares about my vote. You guys want to stay here? Like, you guys are hypnotized by this place. It's so bright and shiny and new, but it's just a fucking prison, which is going
More
back to,
subtext.
yeah, right.
We should have a little a check counter
I
every
know.
time
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it comes up. Ding.
So we see the zombies in the parking lot stumbling around. And then while the radio that they were listening to plays on, and it discusses that these are not cannibals. Cannibalism, in the true sense of the word, implies an intraspecies activity. These creatures cannot be considered human. They prey on humans, they do not prey on each other. And that's the difference here. They attack and eat warm human flesh, and they have basic intelligence. And what basic skills remain are more like remembered behaviors from normal life, like you and I were just discussing. And we see them exploring the mall. We see them stumbling around on the ice skating rink. They're playing with, or kind of fumbling around with toys. And the radio remarks that they have learned to use tools in instances, but only the way that certain animals might learn how to use tools at a very base level. Don't be lulled by the concept that these are your family members or friends. They must be destroyed on sight. And I think that's something that the characters in this movie adapt to better than they do in Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. Although I will say, when the mention of the using tools, we don't get a lot of that in this film. I mean, I know there's parts where they're like holding guns and stuff, just
Mm-hmm.
because they fell on them or something.
Yeah.
But I do distinctly remember in Land of the Dead, the zombies actually learning to fire the guns,
Yeah.
and then it becoming a much more different threat. So
Yeah.
I guess they don't really get into it too much in this about zombies using tools or getting smarter or figuring places out.
The only big moment I can think of in this is a zombie using a crowbar to break the window of the truck.
Yeah.
And that's probably about it. There's a moment where it takes the rifle from Peter at the very end and looks at it in a strange way, and there's a change in the music, and I feel like that's impactful for a reason, but we don't see him use the gun by any means.
But yeah, I guess there is a logic to the zombies, right? And I know they start to figure it out where it's like we don't want the zombies to know where we are in this kind of upstairs
Mhm.
safety area,
Yeah.
so we can't lead them this way. So they have all these kind of ways of getting around that, where
Yeah.
that more aligns with my view of zombies just being hungry and
Mm.
coming wherever there's food.
So Francine approaches the guys and she tells him, like, I don't want to be treated any differently than you guys treat each other. I'm sorry you found out I'm pregnant, but like, I'm not going to be your den mother. I want to know what's going on. And she wants there to be some kind of plan. And she specifically says there are four of us, which I find interesting because she's pregnant. She could have said there are five of us, which I think speaks volumes about her viewpoint on her pregnancy at this point.
She doesn't see it as a soul yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a interesting point because yeah, I love how I love her standing up for herself, and they don't get too into the. It's not like such a disagreeable group, but just her standing up for herself and being like, I want to vote, I want to
Yeah.
say in this dynamic. I thought that was badass.
So she refused to scream in this movie. George gave her the direction to scream at one point, and she said no. Like Francine loses all of her power. That she's just like, as soon as she screams, she's like every other woman in a horror movie. And she was like, I don't want to do it. And George agreed and didn't make her. So she had a lot to do with the development of this character, and I think that's really cool.
I dig her character a lot, actually. I
Yeah.
mean, we'll get to later. I mean, her just like demanding he teaches her to fly the helicopter and
Yeah,
just
and it makes
some of her
sense.
power. It makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Well, she tells Steven she wants a gun, and he gives her one reluctantly, right? Because he took it from her before. And there's this moment, and he hands it to her. They give each other a look. and she tells him to be careful. So Peter has said they're going to head out. She can't come with them, and she won't come with them until she learns how to handle herself. Now, this is a fair point. She doesn't know how to fire a gun yet. She's the untrained one. But then, yeah, that is when she declares she wants to learn how to fly the helicopter in case it comes down to it. And they all are like, fuck yeah, I guess that makes sense. So Roger and Peter each hotwire semi trucks that are kind of off away from the mall. I guess they took the helicopter over to them, and they're going to bring these semis back to the mall.
This plan to me sounded wildly risky.
It's a lot of hullabaloo for what, you know?
To put trucks in front of the door, which
Yeah.
didn't even really stop a whole row of them getting in there. So I was a little, and also it seemed to give away their position a little bit. Actually, it was the helicopter that did that. But.
Yeah. So Francine is watching this from the roof of the mall. They drive the trucks to the mall, and then they head back to get some more of them. But Roger is overtaken by zombies in the cab of the semi while he's hot wiring.
Because he forgets his bag and they have to go back.
Well, before that happens, Roger kind of loses himself when he like shoots one in the head, and you see a change in his expression.
He becomes almost like a maniac, right? Like
Yeah, it overtakes
overconfident.
him. Yeah. So as he's driving, is laughing as he's smashing into these zombies and killing them. One of them is Tom Savini, the one who smashes into the windshield and the blood explodes. They get the semis to the mall, and then Roger just starts shooting unnecessarily, and he leaves his bag behind. Peter tells him, like, get your head on straight, dude. You're not only playing with your own life, you're playing with mine too. And Roger hops out to grab his bag, but he's bitten on the arm as he climbs back into the cab, and then he's bitten on the leg.
Do we know what was in the bag?
I think for me, Peter makes a face like, yeah, we got to go back for it. So it must have been something important.
Keys or something. Yeah.
They get back to the safe room. That, by the way, that bite on the back of his leg looked really painful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They get back to the safe room. They bandage his wounds. They give him some Jack Daniels for the pain. And Steve and Peter go to the gun store, which is filled with taxidermied animals. And the music that plays in the store is like tribal drum music with exotic animal sounds. Can you imagine working in this space? You've got like an 8-hour shift where you have to listen to. It's like working at the Rainforest Cafe without
real death
alcohol. Yeah. But they stock up. They've got guns and ammo and holsters and whatever, like the bullet belts that go across your chest like Rambo. They run through the mall, pushing Steven in a wheelchair and shooting some of the zombies along the way. We just get some really great head trauma in this moment. So many deaths in this movie. So many great moments.
At this point, is it the four of them running around?
Yes, correct. Francine is with them this time. Yeah.
It just seems so risky the way they do it. They're like, it's almost like they're running through like they're playing football. And they're just like deking everybody. I'm like, it just needs one little bite, guys. Like you guys, right. I don't know. They seemed a little bit, and I can't think of the word. Just like they're like cowboys. They're being brash and they're being too risk averse, right? So, but I guess that's part of it.
I totally agree. I would not be behaving this way.
No, I'd be like, get me my gun and my food and let me lock myself up. Like,
so Francine gets the idea to use one of the cars that's on display in the middle of the mall to get around. The idea is they're going to secure all of the doors. And so Peter pushes Roger out of the department store with the wheelbarrow, but Steven has forgotten to pass the keys off to Francine. It takes him forever to get him off his belt, but he does. And she shuts the door behind him and catches the door on a nun's habit, a zombie nun, which Francine lets loose, and she has this moment with this zombie nun. I don't know if it's like mercy or just a comment on faith, perhaps, like where is God in all of this?
Could be. Yeah.
Now, as Roger climbs into the back of the car, a zombie reaches into his bandaged leg and tears his wound back open. And it made me like, I had a reaction to that moment. I didn't see it coming.
That was grimy.
They do get the car started, and they're driving through the mall, and they get to the entrance where the semis are parked on the other side. And they get these doors completely locked. Peter remarks it's pretty indestructible glass, and they don't have leverage with the truck being there to break it. Again, like you said, I
guess that makes some sense. It just seems like a lot of work and waste of gas for what?
They secure another entrance, and then they say they're going to go on the hunt, and they kill all the rest of the zombies that are left in the mall. So now they've secured their space. They fought.
I imagine that this part took over maybe a week or 2 weeks. Like it's almost like time passes at this point.
I would think so. Yeah.
That's what I imagined. Yeah. Like, I mean, it would take a while to kill all those zombies.
Agreed.
And then they round up the bodies too, don't they? They gather up the bodies and
They do. So, yeah, Francine has a really sad moment with a zombie that's sitting just staring at her through the window. And it's almost like she's like, this isn't our inevitable future. Like, this is just what's going to happen to all of us. And then, yeah, they gather the dead and they start putting them in the walk in coolers of restaurants, which is very smart. But there's so much food in there, too, that they're putting these gross dead corpses in there with.
And how do they know? The other thing too is, I mean, with as much information as they have, I don't know if I'd want to be touching these zombies. Like, I don't know how comfortable I would be touching them or keeping them near food or
No,
anything like that.
that's true because they don't
Um,
know anything about what's happening. They don't know how contaminated they are. The first film implies that it could be radiation that caused this. So are they radioactive? We don't know.
yeah. I mean, it just seems like a lot of busy work. I mean, I would have just shoved them in one of the stores that don't matter, but maybe they're worried about the smell.
Yeah, for sure. The rotting, yeah, it's just you're contaminating your food now.
Yeah.
So they get the doors secured, but they decide to build a facade so the door to the stairwell isn't findable. Like you were saying,
That was
the zombies.
smart.
It is really
Put
smart.
like drywall up in front of the door. It's very
Mm-hmm.
smart. He says something like this. He said, "This isn't for the zombies. It's for anyone.
Yeah,
I don't want anyone finding us up here."
which is brilliant. I mean, it's their only safe space. We get a shopping spree slash ice skating slash beauty shop slash like arcade montage. The montages in this movie.
They're living their best life at this point.
They are. They are. Steve gets a haircut. Francine cuts his hair. They're playing video games, but the dead are still outside. And Francine comments, they're after us. And, the response is they're after the place. Like they want to be in here, which I just realized is repeated later. Wow. Okay. That's really clever. I hope I bring it up when we get there.
Okay, please do. Please do.
Peter mentions that his granddaddy was a Macumbo priest in Trinidad, voodoo, and used to tell them when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. And for me, this is
Famous line,
one
right?
of the best lines in cinematic history. It's so
Yeah.
good. And his delivery is excellent.
Classic line. I
It
mean, it's one
was,
of those lines where I feel like as soon as he said, I'm like, I've heard this before.
yeah. Yeah. And it's used in the opening credits of the remake, like a religious news, like a religious zealot on the news he says
That's
it.
where I've heard it. That's
Yeah.
where I've heard it. Yeah.
And I believe it was the tagline. Yeah, it was the tagline for both films too, if I'm not mistaken. So we cut
Huh.
to Roger screaming in pain in the safe room. They give him morphine, but he is not going to last. He and Peter have this moment, and he tells Peter to take care of him when he goes. Like he doesn't want to be walking around like those zombies. It's really sad. And he gets kind of loopy, and he starts saying like, "I'm gonna try not to come back, man. Like I'm gonna try. I'm not gonna come back." But we all know he's going to.
I really like that part about it where he says, I'm going to try not to come back. And like, you're
Yeah,
almost thinking maybe he won't, maybe he'll have the willpower,
yeah,
but it's just another shot of like, just the hopelessness of it that
yeah.
he's coming back.
He's definitely coming back. Stephen and Francine are watching two talking heads on a TV argue. A scientist is suggesting feeding the bitten people to the dead. And he says, like, we should drop nukes on the major cities because that's where they're all congregating.
Terrible plans. Those are
Terrible
terrible
plans.
ideas.
Terrible
Yeah.
ideas. And then he says, this is not Republicans versus Democrats, which was just like, okay, this is COVID. This is so real, you know?
I
It's
can
like
only wonder what the political landscape was in this late 70s that they would go there.
it's just
But
before Reagan, right? When was Reagan? And
wasn't he in like mid 80s?
I think he was early 80s. Oh, I should know this. It
Um,
was a period of transition for America, I guess we'll say.
yeah.
So as he's saying all of this, we see Roger begin to reanimate. And Francine is just stunned at what she's seeing on the television. She tells Stephen, it's really all over, isn't it? And then we hear a gunshot from the other room, and we know Peter has shot Roger. And the men on TV say, we've got to remain logical. We've got to. And they just say that over and over and over again as everybody takes in the weight of Roger being shot because he turned. And it's real, like it's just so well handled because the reality on the TV keeps going and they don't have time to even mourn this man, really, you know?
Yeah. I was thinking just as a little slight digression on zombies. So Roger lasts a long time when
Yes.
since bit. Like he lasts weeks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I mean we can presume at least a few days for him to clear out the whole mall.
Yeah.
Um So what's the logic of a zombie? So if a zombie catches me and bites me and I die, would it not just stay there and feed on my entire corpse until I can't even reanimate because it's like gonna eat all of me? Or does it just after a few bites say, okay, this isn't a human anymore? Does it only is it only interested in eating people so long as the people are alive? Or will a zombie continue to feed on someone's flesh until they turn? Like I guess I was just wondering, like, well, what's the pattern of a zombie in people's minds? What do
So
you
they
think?
they say that they feed on warm human flesh. And then I believe there's a moment where they say they only tend to eat like 5% of the food on a human body. One of the talking heads says that at some point, I believe.
Okay, I guess they just once they bite you and you die, they're not interested anymore.
Yeah, maybe it's got
And
to
that's
be.
why they can reanimate with some of their body still intact. Because I mean, we have seen those scenes in other zombie movies. I'm mixing zombie movies
Yeah.
here, but where it's like a whole swarm of zombie gets one person,
Mhm.
and that person is just completely disemboweled and gone.
Yeah.
That's probably because every zombie gets there. It's like you're getting all eaten at once while
Right,
you're
right.
still alive.
Yeah.
Sounds awful. Okay, that makes sense to me because I was kind of always wondering, like, well, when does a zombie stop eating? Why wouldn't it just finish every person it comes across? But I guess that makes sense.
Like
Okay.
once the flesh is dead, then it's just not appealing anymore.
I guess like once the heart stops beating, they shortly after that they're just done. Even though we do see scenes in the movie, especially at the beginning of the basement of that complex where they're eating like bones
Mhm.
and eating kind of pieces. So some of the logic, like the exact defining logic of what a zombie will do, is a little lost on me. But
Yeah,
I'll
that's
let it
fair.
go.
I'll
I'll
let
let it
it go.
go.
They end up burying Roger in what appears to be a greenhouse. The mall has it all. They fire random bullets at mannequins, and then they sit down in a fancy restaurant. And Peter has prepared a meal for Stephen and Francine, and he serves them wine, and then he leaves them alone. And he's like, "This is for you guys." And he goes back to Roger's grave and he pops a bottle. He's going to hang out with Roger tonight, say goodbye to his friend. Stephen hands Francine a ring, and
That's right.
she tells him like, we can't, not now, it wouldn't be real, and she hands it back to him. And it's like the social constructs like marriage don't matter or exist anymore. Like it's too late to be in love. They might have had
I
a
mean,
chance, and but never could they
you know,
possibly.
my take on that part was like, come on, you're in this situation where you might never get a chance to like have these little romantic gestures.
Mm,
Just go with it. Like,
mm.
just go with it.
That's and I'm the opposite, where I'm like, fuck off, bro, bad timing.
Oh yeah, I'd be like, hey, we could all die tomorrow. Let's just have our mock marriage now. But I guess that kind of solidifies their connection, though, that they are in love, they are having a baby, they are together. And I love how it's drip fed to you throughout the film, and
Yeah.
they kind of that's it's almost like the only time they really get to have a quiet moment together.
Well, we see as time progresses their daily routine of things. She's watering plants in a garden center. There's boredom and this sense of doom, and we see them in bed together. And they're both nude and they're looking away from each other, and they're not moving. They're very still, and they look disinterested or like disappointed or distant, like they're not even there with one another.
Hmm.
So they are still having sex, but it's just not connected at all, you know?
I mean, I mean, in that scenario, no matter how great your situation is, you're still thinking like, where's my mom? Where's my brother? Am I
Yeah.
ever going to see my friend again? I hope my cousin may like I imagine the things that these people are thinking is rough.
Yeah. Big time. Big time. Months seem to have passed because Francine's belly has now filled out quite a bit. She struggles to get out of bed. And Peter is playing a solo game of tennis outside as the zombies mill about the parking lot. And Francine has this moment where she puts on just tons of makeup and almost like clownish makeup and just does her hair. I almost expected her to break out in like, I'm writing a letter to daddy, and just pull off like a whatever happened to baby Jane moment. But this is how they're filling their boredom, right? They're playing records, cooking, drinking, they play cards, and it seems pretty normal, like for whatever normal means now.
They have a pretty good setup there, I gotta say. I mean, I'd be okay staying there for a long time
I
if
mean,
I
look
was
at
them.
them and then look at the people on The Walking Dead who have to scavenge and migrate, and like they've got
You
it.
got
I
a whole
mean,
mall.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
and a lot of guns. So
and a lot of guns. It's dinner time. Steven still watches TV, and Francine tells him he should give up. There has not been a broadcast for 3 days, and she stands up and turns the TV off. And then he stands up and turns it back on and just stares her down. And she says, "What have we done to ourselves?" She gets some really weighty lines. I really like, what a great role. I think she really does an incredible job with it.
That was an interesting point of contention between the two of them because
Mhm.
I mean they both have a point, right? In one hand, of course he wants it on, but the other hand, she just wants a moment of normalcy at dinner.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of poignancy to some of these quick moments between them.
Yeah. And it's also, kind of a point of like hope versus hopelessness. Is she hopeless because she wants it off, or is she just realistic? But then is he realistic? Like it could come back, it's this
I
movie
think I think I read it from her perspective of being, let's just have a moment to enjoy dinner without
totally.
the constant worry about survival. Can we
Yeah,
not just turn this sense of survival off?
absolutely.
Which I thought was really interesting.
We cut to Steven. He loads the helicopter with some ammo and then he teaches Francine to fly it, and she does it successfully. But some bikers in the distance watch the helicopter with binoculars. One of them is, of course, Tom Savini, looking like a total daddy in this movie. I
Yep.
love he's got like a switchblade, but it turns out to be a mustache comb. And
Yeah.
he's such a, like, you can just tell he's an asshole, right? He's just like this character. He's so good. They decide they're going to raid the mall tonight. And so our trio hears them on the radio taunting them and telling, like, we're coming for you. And these bikers arm up and they rev their bikes. They were played by crew members and members of a real local biker gang. So that's where they got all these
Wow.
that's where they got all these tricked out bikes. They were real bikers.
Cool.
The trio prepares for the invasion as the bikers approach. There's a lot of them, like a lot.
Yeah, there's like 40 of them.
They end up busting through the entrance. They ride their motorcycles and vehicles into the mall. Apparently, it was loud. The echo of all of these motors was so loud, it was like deafening to the crew and cast because of the echo throughout the mall of all of these loud, like, tricked out motorcycles.
Choppers.
Yeah.
Wow, I guess I never even considered that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're also followed by zombies from the outside. And Peter, via walkie talkie, tells Steven they're going to have their hands full with the zombies. That'll take some of the heat off of us. Bikers are looting the stores and killing zombies. And then they grab a bunch of pies from a restaurant and have a pie fight with the zombies. Because why not?
I
It,
guess this group isn't, they're not afraid of zombies either. I mean, they're all holding guns and there's 40 of them. They're pretty good for survival too.
No, they just live their lives recklessly. And it comes from a joke. When Romero was writing the first film, he was like, how are we going to kill the zombies? And I believe it was his wife who said you could just pie them in the face as a joke. So he put it in this movie and she hated him for it. She was like, I can't believe you're doing this. But I actually think it totally works. Like, it should not.
Totally works.
It
Well,
should not.
this group almost doesn't, they're almost like, not only are they a biker gang who can stare death in the eyes, but they're like, well armed. There's enough of them. They probably don't see much of a threat.
No, not at all. Steven gets mad watching them do this, and he mutters like, "It's ours. We took it. It's ours." And this pandemonium ensues as the bikers kill more zombies. We get the iconic machete in the head as Tom Savini says, "Say goodbye, creep," which was an on-the-fly idea. An actor was like, "Hey, man, I just want to die in this movie," and so Savini overnight came up with that kill and
Cool.
made it happen. This whole sequence has on the fly kills where they were just running through the mall and they were like, how could we kill somebody here? That's where we get the blood pressure machine.
That was a silly moment for sure.
It's ridiculous. We'll talk about that in a sec. So the bikers realize Peter is shooting from upstairs. Steve turns the lights off in the mall and Peter escapes the bikers. Tom Savini specifically. The zombies stumble in the dark as the bikers keep killing them. Then when the lights come back on, Steven has been shot in the arm in an elevator shaft. And Peter ends up shooting Tom Savini, who falls off a second story into a fountain. He jumped off himself. You can see his face. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
The blood pressure zombie attack. This guy just sits down at a blood pressure machine with his arm in the sleeve, and then it fattens up and he can't get out. And so he gets torn apart by zombies. And we later see
Just his arm.
just his arm, and his blood pressure is high.
It's actually interesting that they even had those machines back in the 70s. I didn't realize they were that old. I thought they would have been
That's a good point.
more of a modern invention, especially like the DIY ones.
Yeah.
That's funny. there's got to be a little of that in a zombie movie, like just kind of like funness,
For
fun
sure,
kills.
especially this one. And we get this super famous disembowelment scene where this guy gets his torso ripped open and they pull out what were real cow organs taken
Oh,
from a butcher shop down the street. Savini has admitted that they are too clean, like they're not blood soaked enough. They do look pretty clean, but these people were ripping out cow organs of a fake torso and putting them in their mouths.
oh wow.
Yeah, it's impactful. It's super effective. The blood in this film is a super vibrant, bright red. In older prints, it actually looks orange. I think it's been
Oh,
recolorized, but Savini hates that. He says that it looks like melted crayons. Romero loves it because he wanted this film to have a comic book feel to it. And for me, it reads very much like a giallo, like a Dario Argento film, because the blood is so vibrant in those.
yes.
They use color as a statement in those films. So for me, it works.
You know, if I was to go back and recolor it, I probably would drop that. You know, now that you notice mention it, the blood is very, very vibrant to the point of
Yeah.
almost feeling fake, like
Oh,
paint.
for sure. It looks
So if
very,
I was
yeah.
to de-blue the zombies, I might just de-red the
Yeah, yeah.
blood just a little bit
While you're
while I'm
at
at
it,
it.
yeah, yeah. It's got a thickness to it as well that's not quite as realistic. Like you said, like it reads like paint.
Yeah, but at least
Uh
it's consistent though. That's the one. I mean, it's consistency that really matters. So
yeah, yeah. So now Peter tells Steven, climb up into the elevator shaft and I'll help you out, but he can't because he's been shot. And zombies bust into the elevator door. Super like famous shot of the zombies reaching for him, and they devour Steven. And Peter has to listen to it happening over the walkie, and it's real sad.
I
Um,
felt bad for Steven. They never really they I guess when I started the movie, in my mind, he was kind of like the I don't want to say the alpha male, but he was like the I thought it was going to be him and Francine left.
yeah,
Like they're the couple. He was at the beginning. I mean, so when I was actually pretty surprised that they killed off. I mean, he's one of the main characters. I was pretty surprised to have him die like that. I was
yeah.
sad.
No, well, and that's but to your point before, like there's not an asshole in this group, so it is really impactful when one of them perishes like that. Roger and Steven, like, these guys, they should have made it,
Yeah,
It's not easy to watch them die like it would be someone who's a bully or a monster or.
totally. I also feel like they were a little. I mean, they could have been a little less reckless
Oh,
overall.
for sure.
At this
Yeah.
point, this the biker gang is gone, right? The biker gang's been driven out at this point.
Yeah, they have retreated. We see the zombies walking through the mall. There's like cheerful stock music playing there, and it's a sequence of them like shopping through the mall, basically. Like they're walking on top of piles of money, they're stepping on these products. An elevator door opens and we see Steven, and he's now a zombie. And
Yeah,
it's a great reveal because you don't think it's going to happen, and he's got his gun still like kind of wrapped in his trigger finger, and it just dangles. His zombie performance is fucking great.
that's great. Oh
He
yeah.
based it on Boris Karloff as the Mummy, actually.
Hmm.
He does seem to remember where the hidden entrance to the safe room is, and does lead the horde of zombies there who break down the facade. So we get the famous zombies breaking down a door moment, just a little bit of a
No,
different.
just go back a little bit because
Yeah,
the biker gang and their whole inclusion, I had some questions about. I like that they're there to kind of be the catalyst for how things fall apart, and they
yeah,
obviously break the door down, which that lets the zombies in. But what was the plan from the other guys? Where like should they not have just hid? They've already hidden the door. They've got the
yeah.
guns. They really can just hide. But or and also was their expectation to drive the biker gang out? Like why did the biker gang leave because there was just too many zombies and too many people firing at them? You'd think the biker gang would be like, screw this. There's a whole bunch of us. Let's take over them all.
Right.
Let's stay here. So I don't know if antagonizing them was the approach. I mean, obviously it got poor Steven killed.
Right.
I
And
guess it's just a kind of a muddy like what their expectation was and what actually like did their shooting at them actually drive the biker gang out? And it just seems like kind of a risk.
so here's my take. If we're on the consumerism kick, hoarding your wealth, right? Like we took this is ours. We're not going to let anybody take it from us. I think has, something to do with it a little bit. There is a moment where there is an overtake when the guy gets his guts ripped out, where it does seem like the zombies are winning, and that's when the bikers start to retreat.
Yeah.
but it would have been very easy for the three of them to just stay in the safe room, or I don't know, get in the helicopter and fly away,
Yeah.
and they opt to instead try to defend what material possessions. Do you know? Like Stephen could still be alive if they hadn't made this
Yeah, I
decision.
mean it's an interesting point because on the other hand, if they had just sat up there, then maybe the biker gang could have just completely taken over the space and kept them at risk.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like interesting. What's the circumstances here?
Well, okay, so before, when Peter said the line, Francine said, "They're here for us," meaning the zombies, and Peter said, "No, they're here for the place." And I said, "Oh my God, it's brilliant." They say it again here, where Steven now says, "They're here for us," meaning the bikers. And Peter says again, "No, they're here for the place," um,
Hmm.
meaning the bikers, not the zombies this time, which is a pretty
So
cool.
everyone's here for the place,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether you're dead or alive. Interesting. I mean, yeah. I guess if I had figured the biker gang was just going to come loot the place and leave, like they more or less did, I probably would have hid.
Sure.
But
Oh, yeah,
thinking
definitely.
that they might just stay there and try to, maybe take the woman and rape her or whatever terrible things could have also happened. Maybe firing back was the right call. I don't know.
I don't think they ever would have been found if they were hidden.
Yeah.
What are the three of them? Technically, the two of them, because Francine doesn't go defend the place, right? She's in the safe room. So, like, what did they think they were going to get done?
Well, I don't know, but if that huge biker gang took over the entire mall and kind of made it like their own like encampment, I feel like
Mhm.
eventually they would have gone to the
They would
roof,
have found it.
they would have found it, and that could
That's
have
a
been
good point.
bad.
No, that's true. That's right. That's right.
But it sounds like the weird thing is that even when the zombies are like kind of overtaking them and they're leaving, they're still like hootering and hollering as they're driving out of the parking lot. They're like, oh yeah," and I'm just kind of like, well, they're not really afraid.
No, because even
Y-
their buddy, like the one of the leader guys, gets Peter gets him, shoots him off the sidecar of the motorcycle, and then this
yeah,
it's a great when he's just like trying to mow them down with his machine gun, and they all just like close in on him. It's a great shot,
yeah.
but
It's a cool scene. I wonder if the biker gang though, like if the world was real, the biker gang was planning to go back and say, okay, well, we'll loot this every week.
oh
Why
sure,
not?
why
It's a
not?
mall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they clearly have lots of ammo to do it with.
Perfect encampment too. I mean, you get in there, you board. I mean, rather than just putting the trucks in front of the doors, I would have been boarding those walls up.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
drywalled over their door to their security room. I would have done as much as I possibly could to blockade this place.
yeah,
And
for sure.
um, but
No,
anyways,
the trucks were lame. We've got Steven is a zombie now. Peter tells Francine, Peter's like watching in the stairwell and he sees Steven coming with zombies behind him. He tells Francine, "Go on without me." And he actually tells her, like, "I don't want to go. Like, I really don't." He is broken. Like, he doesn't want to live in this world anymore. And zombie Steven enters the safe room through the door, and Peter shoots him in the head, exploding his brains out the back of his head, blood all over the walls. It's a great shot, and more zombies follow. And Peter gets Francine to climb up out of the safe room onto the roof as the zombies close in. She heads for the helicopter and starts it up. She waits as long as she can to see if Peter's going to climb out and join her. And it's just zombies coming up. And then, so she starts flying away. As the dawn hits the horizon, Peter, who has his gun aimed at his head, changes his mind and pulls it away from his head. And he starts fighting through the horde of zombies while this like weirdly triumphant music starts playing, like super inappropriate to the tone of a film, doesn't
yeah.
match the rest of it. As she's flying away, starting to ascend, Peter climbs out and he's still kicking zombie ass. And she lowers the chopper and he climbs in and he asks her, "How much fuel do we have?" And she says, "Not much." And he says, "All right." And they fly off into the sunrise as the zombies watch. And the closing credits are shots of zombie infested mall while we get bouncy Papa shopping music. And that's the end of Dawn of the Dead.
I wish I could know what happens to them, their adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of the frustrating point of like a Romero film is that he doesn't continue character stories. He continues like the state of the world, you know?
But it kind of makes sense, right? It's like how
Yeah.
much more is there to their story? Okay, what do they live happily ever after, and that's fine. Do they die? That's fine. But it's almost like that's not the point, right? It's like a
Yeah.
slice of survival adventure.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
Should we talk about the alternate ending?
Yeah, why don't you describe that?
So I didn't, I mean, they never filmed it apparently, but the both characters were meant to commit suicide in the end, with Peter, I think in that same scenario, shooting himself in the head, and then Francine, I believe, cutting her head off with the blade of the helicopter.
Yeah, that's what
And
I read.
they decided not to do it. And I think that was probably the right choice because that's
Mhm.
just a very dreary ending for what is, zombie movies are not necessarily that dreary, I don't think. Um, but I'm very, very curious how she would have cut her head off. I mean, that's a very odd way to kill yourself, and just like how they would have filmed that and made that look, and how they would have made that idea process in her head. It's just very gruesome idea. Like I understand putting a gun to your head and pulling the trigger and it's over, but like to like for her to like I guess stand up on a box and then lean her head into the blade is. I mean, that's wild. That'd be a wild, wild ending for a
Yeah,
pregnant woman to do that.
that's true. I hadn't even, yeah, that's right. She's pregnant.
Would
I'm glad we got to
have been a
see
meme,
it.
a GIF.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm glad we got to see it toward the beginning of the movie. I'm really glad that it wasn't Francine that did it. Like, I'm glad that it ended the way that it did, especially because Night of the Living Dead ends with no one surviving. So,
The
like,
cops.
the sure, right, yeah.
Yeah.
The hillbilly, you know, vigilantes, but I feel like being Dawn, being like a new day, you know, let somebody live. Like it's the bleakness of the beginning of this film. If that tone had carried on through the entire thing, I could see it. But this movie gives us these moments of levity that I
Yeah.
think justify, like, let's see these people live. Even Peter deciding not to shoot himself at the last minute, like, I am so glad,
Yeah.
it doesn't come off as cheesy except for the music. Like, it's earned, right? We want
Totally.
Peter to keep going.
It's like a little thing. It's nice to have a little bit of hope at the end of the film to be like,
Yeah,
okay, well, our protagonist lived. Although
yeah,
I do think that him contemplating suicide put a huge risk on both of them. Like they could have both comfortably made it to that helicopter and flown away. But if he didn't sit there and contemplate suicide, now they have this super close call,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, for sure.
The one thing they could have done at the very ending is he got on the plane and it just cuts to like the side of his arm. He's got a bite there, and
Oh
that's just
no.
it. That could
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
something.
No, no, I feel like I don't know if they spend the rest of their lives together, like as acquaintances or whatever, but I think that they get to where they're going and they just have this shared experience. And I don't know. How do you move on from that?
I mean, I guess Walking Dead has shown us you go to an encampment for a season and then you switch encampments every season.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's
So
a good place, it's usually a bad place. And
yeah, or like Land of the Dead, where they get into the like I guess the political landscape of a quarantine zone and
right.
what that means and just classism and all that.
On Rick or Treat Horrorcast, we have a rating system. A movie is either a trick, which means it's pretty good, it is a treat, which means you love it, or it is a smell my feet, which means it sucked.
Oh, definitely a treat
Yeah.
from I'm calling this a treat for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously when you watch older movies, and I know a lot of people I have a hard time watching older films pre 1980, but even for 1978, this movie holds up really well. It doesn't like the characters are thoughtful, and nothing feels it feels like well written in a way to keep you interesting, keep you entertained, but also giving the characters kind of this three-dimensional depth without hammering it into your face, as you mentioned.
Yes.
There's no sit down and conversations. It's these little moments with the ring and with the little things they say to each other that give this hint of all this extra depth. And I love it. And I love how the two our two kind of SWAT team guys, Roger and Peter, are like not the typical badass Arnold Schwarzenegger
Yep.
tropey kind of military assholes. They're different. They're complicated. And yeah, this you know what I would say when I put this movie on, I was kind of expecting to be a lot cheesier than it turned out to be,
Mm,
and I was surprised about I want to say 15 minutes in the movie. I'm like, wow, this movie has its hooks in me. I want to see what happens and what they're gonna do. And also having seen the remake, I was really thrown off by how interested I was in this plot and where it was going.
good.
So definitely a treat. Definitely a treat.
Good. I'm gonna give it a treat too. This is a movie, again, I haven't seen it in probably 20 years, and it's been on my list to revisit and just hasn't made it. And this is a horror lover's horror movie. It's required viewing, in my opinion, right? Even if it's not going to be your favorite, you must see this film. And I'm going to echo literally everything that you just said. Like, it's just engaging and unique. It's got a very specific look and feel to it. There's a tone, and is it a little heavy-handed with its commentary? Maybe, but like, this was also probably the first movie that was making that commentary. So maybe I'm just
I
a
don't I
little.
don't know I don't know if I'd call it heavy-handed when you consider all the other movies with what I would call a heavy-handed themes, where it's just
Yeah.
in your face, every scene, long talk, monologue with music. Like, this movie, I think, did it pretty well. I still don't know what the heart of the commentary is. I guess it's just more of a thematic thing about consumerism and
Mhm.
overconsumption, and what that means in a post-apocalyptic world versus a normal world. But I like that it doesn't have like a succinct message. Like,
Yes.
if we didn't have malls, this wouldn't have happened, or people are this way. It's kind of open-ended, and I think that's the way a theme and a subtext should be. So,
Yes. Yeah.
having this chat with you, and you kind of bringing up these moments of the subtext, I clearly missed a lot of these little hints in the way it ties in. So I love these types of talks where I can like kind of recontextualize everything in the movie.
This is
I,
why
I love it.
I love doing this show, because I expected to come in here giving it a trick based on my memory of it, and I'm leaving with a treat. And even with our discussion, I picked up on, okay, there's socioeconomical commentary with like the tenement in the projects at the beginning. There's media commentary with the news station. It's like, but it's more about, let me think about that, instead of you are telling me what I need to think about it. And that's
Yeah,
exactly like you said, what a good movie should be, for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think the format of your podcast is awesome, man. I listen to a lot of movie podcasts, ones that will dive into the screenplay or dive into the effects or the flaws or the critical reception. But I love the way that you go through the movie and the plot itself and the characters and dive into the subtext, but also giving a little bit of outside facts and knowledge. Like, it's great. It's like such a nice way to review a film. And even one of my favorites, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I was telling you, I listened to that to kind of learn about your podcast. Like, I had read Gunnar Hansen's book, and I've seen the movie a bunch, and I would consider myself a pretty big fan of the movie, and I'm still like getting this very interesting like subtext, and you're just bouncing off uh the ideas in the film, and where they filmed it, and what it would have meant and smelled like and everything. And I just love your podcast format, man. I think it's a really great approach to films. Like, you got to keep doing this and keep doing more and more movies.
That means so much. Like, truly, really, thank you for that. That's why I love the horror genre, is because it speaks to people in different ways, and it's like we can talk about the same movie to four different people and have four different reads, and none of them are wrong. And I think that's really fucking cool. So I can't thank
Totally.
you enough for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Where can my listeners stalk you?
So you can stalk me on the Deformed Lunchbox channels. You can just Google us, but we got YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Threads and everything. But we also have a Discord, so you'll find the Discord link on our YouTube video descriptions, I guess. It's out there. But if you come join us in the Discord, there's kind of a growing group of us horror nerds now, and we're sharing our films, and we're giving some behind the scenes. So check us out. Just Google Deformed Lunchbox if you want to join the lunchbox, as we say.
And I can't recommend it enough, guys. Check out these films, and I'm so excited for Baleful, your feature. I can't wait to see what happens with that. You can follow my podcast, Rick or Treat Horrorcast, at Rick or Treat Pod on all social media platforms. My YouTube channel is Rick or Treat Horrorcast. It's taken off lately. I've got a few thousand subscribers, which is kind of cool, thanks to my social media manager. And that's the show. Thank you again, Peter. Thanks to Deformed Lunchbox, and thank you, listeners. We'll see y'all later, Spookies.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming Rick or Treating. It'd be a real scream if you'd take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. The show's spooky intro and outro music is a cover of Camille Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, with orchestrations composed and performed by Lestat von Monlicht. My website, rickortreat.com, is designed and maintained by Evelyn DeVere. The show's social media content is created by my evil minion and social media manager, Stanley Martin. The Rick or Treat logo was designed by Philip Romano. Contact information and links to these artists can be found in the episode description. Check them out, they're frighteningly talented. Rick or Treat Horrorcast is independently produced by me, Ricky J. Duarte of Rick or Treat Productions. If you like what you heard, tell a friend. If you didn't, well, they're coming to get you, listener.